Does it surprise us that this has come up? Not at all, because if anyone watches the national news, they can see what happened with the Washington Redskins, and groups have also approached the Cleveland Indians asking, is it proper that this sort of mascot is the mascot of a professional organization?
That was Chris Williams, the communications director for the Davis School District, back in July, discussing the controversy surrounding Bountiful High School's mascot, the Braves. Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on changing Bountiful High's mascot. Today, Principal Aaron Hogge announced he's decided to change the mascot after 4 months of public input, discussion, and deliberation. ABC4's Jason Nguyen caught up with him earlier today, shortly after the announcement. Here's part of their interview.
You made a big announcement at 4 o'clock. I mean, what? Tell me about the thought process and the actual input the committees gave you.
Thank you.
Coming up with this, moving into a new era.
Thank you. The committee was a wonderful process that we began in the summer. We wanted to look at the impact of the mascot. We were already in the thick of the pandemic, knew that there was already creating some division. Students were struggling with really identifying with their limited time in school. And we saw some division with the mascot being a part of that division. Just one aspect, certainly, of division that we saw. And so I asked our school board and superintendency if we could look at the mascot and look at the effects of the mascot. We formed a committee with students and parents and district personnel and district or state office of education personnel, and we really analyzed it. We had some listening sessions where the public could come and give their input. We analyzed that. We looked at some literature that was out there to really look at the effects of the mascot. They gave their recommendations, and I appreciate the whole process was very cordial, very respectful. It became a really a wonderful committee process. And they were able to look at both sides and really look at the merits of both sides. And after doing so, they gave their recommendation, and each had their own opportunity to give a recommendation. And as an administration, and I as the principal, then took those recommendations and came up with the decision that now is the time to change the mascot of Bountiful High School.
Well, what were some of those voices that you heard in the meetings that we didn't hear?
Sure. What I heard is just the pride and the tradition of Bountiful High School. And we have identified with the Bountiful Braves for 70 years. And what a great mascot to really identify with. The strong, brave, courageous Native Americans. And what a great theme to really rally around. And we're excited to move forward into the next phase of rallying around a mascot that will have all of us feel like we can identify with that mascot and really be proud of that mascot.
What were some of the conversations that you had with the Native American tribes about the Braves?
Our Native American tribes are amazing people, and they're thick with tradition and pride, and we really appreciate their input. And really, there is not a consensus with all of them. There were some that felt that there was a reason and merit to keep it. And there were others who felt that a change and going away from Native American mascots would benefit them. And so we listened to their voices. And again, not a consensus, but really looked at the merits of their discussion. And that was part of our decision.
For the people that are at home that may still be confused about this issue, what do you have to tell them?
What I would say is Bountiful High School and those that have graduated as Braves will always be Braves and always be proud of their educational heritage, that they were part of this high school community. And we're looking forward to another 70 years of pride in our educational community, rallying around a mascot that everyone can feel comfortable with. That's going to be our goal.
What's the next steps here? I mean,
Thank
obviously
you.
You have to form a new committee here.
Yeah. So our goal now would be to get input from our incoming students, the junior high students and high school students that will feed Bountiful High School will have a chance to give submissions. And they'll let us know what they feel like our mascot ought to be. We'll take those submissions and then do some voting and whittle those down to a smaller number. And then once we get to a smaller number as the administration, we'll make that final decision. And then our goal is to do that in the next 2 months.
So
and then
there's a new mascot,
absolutely.
New name, everything.
That will be effective the next school year. Yeah, we'll finish this school year as the Bountiful Braves. Begin the summer will be very busy getting everything ready to go, and come fall we'll start the new school year with a new mascot.
Now, obviously, the seniors are going to graduate. They're going to be the last ones with the Braves name. You've been a principal here for quite some time. You know, it's got to be a little emotional to say goodbye to a name like that.
It is, and we're going to have a retiring of the mascot, and excited about it. We haven't planned it yet. We've just kind of begun that process where we will retire the Braves mascot and formally introduce the new mascot to our student body. Probably something out in the football field or something, and really make it a wonderful, exciting process.
Something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
That was ABC4's Jason Nguyen in the interview. Coming up, reaction to the Bountiful High principal's decision to change the mascot. We'll be right back with tonight's In Focus discussion.
Our first goal is to start the conversation. You know, our nation is having a reckoning with our relationship with race right now. And we're seeing these discussions happen on a national level with professional teams.
That was Mallory Rogers, an alum of Bountiful High School, back in July in an interview talking about why she and Mykala Rogers took the initiative to start a petition to change the school's mascot, the Braves. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on changing Bountiful High's mascot. Joining us live in studio tonight to continue this conversation is James Singer, co-founder of the Utah League of Native American Voters, and via Zoom, Megan Singer, director of the Native American Initiative at Utah Valley University. And I just want to clarify, James and Meg are siblings. Thank you so much both for being here tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So the original petition to change Bountiful High School's mascot back in July came from two alums, Mallory Rogers and Mykala Rogers, who are not related. They're actually not siblings. They don't have Native American heritage. James, you had mentioned that seeing something like this excites you. Tell me why.
It shows that people can stand up to racism wherever they see it, regardless of one's ethnicity. I think what's important to notice, though, is just the history of how this naming happened. This was done in the 1950s when school segregation based on race was still happening. Just north in Brigham City, there was an Indian boarding school where students were taken off the reservations and put at this place, and it wasn't the same kind of education that one would receive at Bountiful High. It was made by white Americans, and it was perpetuated by white Americans in a primarily white school. And so seeing that other white Americans see the problem of this, and seeing that they were the ones there, or people in their community had put this up and they wanted to change that, is just super exciting to see that we can put an end to some of these racial animosities or discrimination that exists.
And I think when it comes to these difficult conversations, we welcome allies to join in, and sometimes to even ring the alarm. Meg, this is not just something happening at the local level. Tell me about where else we're seeing changes to Native American mascotry.
Thank you. Yeah, we're seeing mascotry being challenged all across the nation. We're seeing it in, NFL, we're seeing it in schools, we're seeing it in Little League, where these mascots, people are thinking about them. And I think a big part of that is just what you said, Rosie, which is allies. We've had a huge influx of people who are interested in learning about race, learning about oppression, learning about our own history in America, and how sometimes, especially when we're talking about Native people, they haven't had control over how they're viewed, or they're in this case they're used as a joke, as a mascot for people to rally behind, rather than actual people, living people who are still alive today.
Now, we did reach out to the other side that opposed changing the mascot, but we're unable to get someone on the show today. However, we do want to include them in this conversation. We're going to play a few sound bites from our interview with them back in July, and I'd like to hear your responses to them. Here's the first one.
I think of Braves as more of, if a group of people's brave, I don't see how that's negative, and I can understand the argument of like down at Cedar City with the Red Men and with the Redskins, and how those depictions could be seen as offensive.
Now, James, you had said before that our Indigenous communities are not a monolith, meaning you don't all have the same opinion. Some believe that Native American mascotry pays tribute to the culture, while others believe it perpetuates negative stereotypes. Meg, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of this other side, this other dialogue that has been happening for this. I think one of the biggest things that we have to learn is that the perspectives that we need to hear is more than just what we think. I think one of the things that was really, really hard for people to realize is that stereotypes, no matter if they put people in a positive or a negative light, are inherently racist and are actually very harmful. So even though we would like to think, Braves as being brave and valiant and pride, it stems from Native Americans being, dehumanized in a way that they don't have actual control over how they're viewed. And so then they're viewed as a joke. I know that a lot of times when students are when Native students are in school, it's those stereotypes, whether they're good or bad, that they are always having to challenge just to be seen as, just as humans.
All right, James and Meg, hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we will continue our In Focus discussion on changing Bountiful High's mascot with James Singer and Megan Singer.
I had a lot of friends who were Native Americans. There were students in my class that were, and I just felt like, they weren't offended. And I feel like there would be better ways to go about solving an issue than just canceling it altogether.
That was Brett Baker back in July, a Bountiful High alum who created the counter petition to keep the school's mascot of 69 years, the Braves. Welcome to our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on changing Bountiful High's mascot. Before the break, James Singer, co-founder of the Utah League of Native American Voters, and Megan Singer, director of the Native American Initiative at Utah Valley University, joined us for a live discussion. We pick up right where we left off. One interesting element of this conversation that I want to address is using ethnicities and cultures as a mascot. I brought this up to Brett in our July interview. I said, how do you feel about the argument that we don't see other ethnicities or cultures being used as mascot, which is why this comes off as dehumanizing for some Native Americans, and this is what he said.
I understand that point of view. I would disagree that other ethnic groups aren't. I mean, just for an example, like the New York Yankees, the Yankees were an ethnic group, or that was a title for them.
James, what's your response to what he said?
I think Mr. Baker is getting to an interesting point on a larger scale. He mentions the Yankees, but there are other teams like Notre Dame with the Fighting Irish. We see the Celtics or Celtics of Boston. The Minnesota Vikings are other things too. What's really important to understand about the nature of racism in our country is that it doesn't have to be an individual doing it to another individual, and it doesn't have to be intentional. And so there is what underlies all of this is power. Who's controlling the conversation? Who's controlling the narratives? So when we look at something like Minnesota, the Vikings don't exist anymore, but their offspring do, as folks in Scandinavia, and they identified with that. Well, and they're also white Americans. They haven't been systematically and historically oppressed group. And that's why it's a little bit different, is that natives didn't get to say what they felt about this. This was bestowed upon them and it said, well, this is honoring you. But it's not an honor. I think of the many ways in which we are honored. Think of the Navajo Code Talkers in World War II and the ways in which they were honored, or the ways in which Jim Thorpe, the great Olympian, was honored with 2 gold medals. In no other situation have I seen a moment of honor given to Native Americans where they award us with a mascot. A mascot stereotypes, it essentializes, it makes us all into the Hollywood tribe, and that's exactly the kind of images that we've seen up on the screen here. Those are ones that show this Hollywood Indian, and that's not who we are.
Meg, what kind of impact can it have on an Indigenous student to attend a school where there is a Native American mascot?
Well, I know from not firsthand experience, but working with the students at Bountiful High School, both Native and non-Native, of how this has impacted them as people, as students, and how they kind of view their community. I know the last 4 months they have been using this time to educate themselves. They are articulate, they are strong, they are powerful, but at what cost? They were having to defend themselves against adults who just didn't want to listen, or community members who didn't want to listen. And again, they were trying to create kindness in the community, and to retire this mascot in kindness because it was kind. So when I look at them and I think about what they've learned, great, but also they should be in school studying studying right now. How are their grades doing? This is when we talk about people of color, Indigenous people, Black people having to do 2 times the work just to get a point across, or to feel like they are validated in thinking the way that they can. So we're really, really happy that, and we're so proud of all of the students who have worked so hard and diligently, and now it's about healing it and moving forward.
We have time for one question, and I want to hear from both of you guys on this. Today, Bountiful High School Principal Aaron Hogge announced that the school would be changing their mascot. James, let's start with you. What is your reaction to this?
Oh, I'm very happy with this because I feel this was a fair process. One thing that Mr. Baker mentioned in his segment there was about just canceling outright, and I think that would also be wrong. I feel like the process was good, that voices were heard, and that we saw something of undoing racism systemically in our society. That can't be anything but good for everyone in that community.
And I want to mention that today, November 30th, is the last day of Native American Heritage Month. Yeah. So it's kind of appropriate that they chose today to make such an important announcement. Meg, let's hear from you. The announcement was made today, 4 months of public input, and you said you've been working with students, both Native and non-Native, at Bountiful High School. When you heard the announcement today at 4 o'clock, what was your initial reaction and thoughts about it?
Yeah, I was first in shock. I didn't believe it because, as Native people, as Native educators, we get to this point and then, it crumbles because we go against the wall. We're going against power. And so when, this happened, that yes, it's going to change, and it's going to change because, just what the principal said, because the merit of the argument is that it needs to change. Made me so happy. It made me have hope in humanity and a lot of hope in Utah. I'm a native of Utah, grew up in Utah, and I don't like having to fight for retiring mascots in Utah, and so I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. It's done.
Yeah, moments like this make the fights really worthwhile. Yeah. You've been hearing from James Singer, co-founder of the Utah League of Native American Voters, and Megan Singer, director of the Native American Initiative at Utah Valley University. Brother and sister, thank you both for being here tonight and engaging in this insightful conversation. We appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you.